Then I started doing a Bob Dylan thing because I love Bob Dylan. And as I was doing the Bob Dylan thing, it was at coffee houses. And it was right when beatniks were turning into hippies. You guys, probably most people wouldn't know what beatniks were, but beatniks were the precursors to hippies.
Mm.
And the big difference that I thought really was noticeable was at the end of a song, beatniks would click their fingers, snap their fingers instead of applauding or anything. So I would do these coffee houses, and Bob Dylan was, relatively unknown, but he had a couple of songs that were out that he was known as a writer. The Byrds had done Mr. Tambourine Man. It was a big hit. And I think Peter, Paul, and Mary did Blowing in the Wind. So you heard of Bob Dylan as a songwriter, much like other songwriters who became popular with other artists doing their material. But in these days, I love doing that music. For some reason, he spoke to me. And I wasn't a singer. I was a club act, but my voice was a lot like Bob Dylan. So I could do Bob Dylan songs really well. And I had a friend named Bert Synagogue, and Bert worked in the local guitar and musical instrument store, and he kept telling me, "You sound just like Bob Dylan. We could book you as Bob Dylan and make some money." I'm like, "Really? Yeah. We'll book you as Bob Dylan." So he rents the hall, the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, and another place in a place called Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. And literally, people bought tickets to see Bob Dylan. And I walked out on stage, and I had the hair, and I had sunglasses on, and I had my dad's Pendleton from like 1950 on, and harmonica holder up, and he had one blue spotlight on me, and so I'm on. I'll never forget it. I was really nervous about the whole thing, and there was a couple thousand people in the audience, all thinking they were seeing Bob Dylan. And the disc jockey from the area was to introduce me, and so backstage he came up to me with an album under his arm and asked me to sign the album, and I thought for sure, this is it. He's 24 inches away from me. He's going to know I'm not Bob Dylan. But in the days before MTV, people really didn't know what anybody looked like. It was just top 40 radio. You heard the song played, you became familiar with it, but you didn't know who people were. And Bob Dylan's first album was a picture of him walking down a street in New York with hand in hand with I don't know if it was Joan Baez, but with a woman, and it was from a distance. So anyway, I got up and did this show. And in those days, there was no credit cards. I know this sounds really strange.
It does. So it was all cash.
It was all cash. So Bert went to the box office and got all the cash, and we fled in my 1963 Oldsmobile Cutlass out the back at the end while the standing ovation was taking place. And then we did it again, and somebody the second time must have seen that Bob Dylan was on tour somewhere, and how could he be at this place tonight? So, we got a phone call from the manager of Bob Dylan saying, that if we actually appeared, the police would arrest us and stuff. And so,
but the loophole was that you were Milwaukee's Bob Dylan, right? That's what you guys would say?
Well, that's what we thought would be if we ever, really got into legal problems, was Milwaukee's Bob Dylan was on the poster. But, Bob Dylan was from Minneapolis, from someplace in Minnesota, some little town. People didn't know where he was from.
Yeah.
So that's how we did it. It was, but we didn't get in trouble for that. But that was the end of my career of Bob Dylan.